Our story-oriented deck builder roguelike started to be considered story-oriented after all. Before that, we somehow can't seem to make a dent in it, needs to be rewritten halfway through the game, and we're not ready for such things now. Everything that is not tested by the tester will be tested later by the players. You will face both graphics bugs and technical bugs. Probably the most surprising one is Shrek's toilet on the map. I'm rather stating that we've scheduled the release for the end of Knock Knock, Travelers. My name is Andrew, and today we decided to answer your questions, which you have been asking us for more than a week on different social networks. Today I have with me Nastia, community manager, also you know her as Marfonia, and Michael, game designer, who you often see in the video diaries of developers on our YouTube channel. As you may remember, if you read our developer diaries, we're working on a complete rework of Venadi's, which I hope we'll be able to show you by the end of February. In other news, we have a bunch of little things going on every week. We are doing a lot of bug fixing. A lot of bugs have already been fixed. You can see it in the game, in the weekly updates, especially on the test branch. We're mostly fixing the bugs that got hit last month before New Year's Eve, while we were fixing and reworking Bjorn and the whole global map. The rest of the news will probably be in question format by now, and I'll pass the word to Nastia with her big list of questions to the developers, but, however, we cut it in half. Please.
Before we continue with the answers to the questions, I'd like to add that we participated in the Storytellers Festival. This is a very cool festival for story-oriented games. And we were very pleased that we were selected and participated in this festival among a huge number of visual novels. We are very, very happy about that.
It's great that our story-oriented deck builder roguelike started to be considered story-oriented after all.
Let's get to the questions, finally. First question. Where do you get experience from if you're not physically a coder, and for certain reasons you can't become one?
Definitely a big plus if you are trying to get a team together and do something. It's good that you understand code, well, or at least Unity in the engine, not necessarily the code itself, to more easily understand your capabilities, the capabilities of your engine and your team. But gaining experience is the easiest way that I can say. As a studio manager, I would say that if you don't know how to do anything, but you really want to, you can start from volunteering and try yourself in different aspects, to courses, if you have drawing skills, coding skills. And courses are not necessarily paid, they are just a whole bunch of them, and on YouTube including. You can easily start learning. And this is how to work in a team, in a studio. You should definitely go as a volunteer or a tester. It seems like such a job. Well, I'm a tester. I just play the game, but in fact it's a very, very important job, because everything that is not tested by the tester will be tested later by the players. And it will affect the quality of the product. Well, first of all, the feedback. That's why. And as a tester, you will face all aspects of the game. You will face both graphics bugs and technical bugs. You will get acquainted with the narrative, see how it works. Well, in general, I think a tester is the best way to get into IT, to get into game dev, to get familiar with different things, to see how other testers work, to see these checklists and all that. So any way at all it is possible, so you can gain experience by making mods in games yourself, which you can kind of apply right away. And usually games have very convenient engines, where you don't need to know coding to do something and script something here, and then you can concentrate on what you get and develop in that direction. I think that this is the best way for a person who doesn't know anything about game made. Well, a person who thinks he doesn't know how to do it and is trying to find his way.
Michael, what can you say as a game designer?
Yes, Andrew has already said it for me. But if you don't want to work on a finished product as a tester to gain experience in this respect, but you have an idea and you want to realize it somehow, you don't necessarily need to know any programming languages that are really hard and complicated. That is, if you do not want to make AAA game on the 5th Unreal with particles and other things, you can take some engine, which is less demanding, even the same RPG Maker, which is freely available, on which many interesting and curious projects are realized. And sometimes it is not even clear that these projects are made on RPG Maker. In principle, you can already at least start with it. And on the other hand, in any case, one person, no matter how talented he was, is not much, because integrity and weight have only a team. You can't make a game by yourself. In most cases, at least of decent quality.
Even we know games that are said to have been made by one person, but when you look at the credits, you see that there were a whole bunch of people involved. Of course, he was a leader himself, of course. A team must have a leader who leads in one direction, otherwise it will be like in the fable. The swan, the crayfish and the pike. Everyone is pulling their own way, and without a rudder, let's say, a locomotive, it will not go in one direction. So even a game that was made by one person, yes, he was the locomotive, yes, he drove it to fruition, but if you see the credits of any game that was made by one person full-time, I'm not talking about some micro indie game that's 30 minutes of gameplay or something like that. That's still a lot of people who were involved in one way or another. Otherwise the production of the game probably took forever. You had to study to be a musician to start writing music, and then go to be a house artist to learn how to draw.
Then you go to programming, then you go somewhere else. And then you're 80 years old and the game hasn't come out yet. And you just started making it, because, well, I know how to do everything now. Retirement, you have time.
Ah, that's a very lifelike question. I liked it so much. Great. How are you all? I mean you and I, who are involved in our game, from community managers to coders, animators and so on. How do we deal with negative messages, with pressure, with criticism? And what advice would we give to a newcomer?
The first thing you have to emphasize from all the negativity that pours in on the game is to realize that negative reviews, first and foremost, are a great tool to find the game's problem. You need to remember that you are not making the game for yourself. No, of course, if you're making a game just for yourself, then you should ignore any negativity at all, because I like it that way. That's what I do. And what you think, well, that's your problem. But if you make a game first of all for people, and then for yourself, that is, you want to make a game that you want, but in such a way that people can play it, and not only yourself, then of course negative feedback is the best tool to find problems. And if someone wrote a negative post, review, something on a game, think about why that situation arose. I can break it down even on the example of our game. The negativity was that Milenis does 300 damage at once, x3 attack. How do you even survive that? The player only has 100 HP, and what nonsense. While the idea was for Milenis to just kill you. I mean, plot-wise you've come to I won't spoil who, and she already just wants to kill you, and you're too weak to actually stand up to her, no matter how well you go. And certainly players have found a bunch of ways to get around that, and that's the way it was intended. But the negativity of people who come into the game and don't understand why that's the case. So it looks like bad game design to them, and that was the fact of bad game design. Narratively, in terms of presentation, we got a lot of negative comments on that, even though we weren't just making a game that was, get to the last boss and kill it. And we took that criticism, we understood it, we had a lot of arguments that, yeah, that's the way we should do it. I've always said that's the way it should be, but players don't understand that, and we're not Dark Souls to make people suffer. We just have to give them an understanding of how it should be, and we're planning in the coming months to completely redo this arc with Milenis. Spoiler. It's just going to kill you without any alternatives, so that players will have thoughts of, is this kind of gameplay design and these kinds of numbers tweaked? Isn't it too cool? No, it will be just kill and that's it. That is, and live with it, but further storyline it will be revealed, so the game is not about the fact that you just reached the last boss, killed him and that's it, it's over. The game is about the fact that we have a big world with a lot of things going on. A lot of events, a lot of fights, and a lot of interesting characters. We made you a lot of bosses, things, perks, story stuff, event development, and if you went to knock of the coffin lid, then to play card roguelike, then do not worry, we will make a separate mode for it. It's already all written. It's just a little bit left to draw and that's it. In this mode you can just play card roguelike, where you will just elevation, complication, reruns, everything as usual, nothing supernatural. Yes, with its intricacies, definitely, but fans of just runs with some results will get what they want. It'll just be a different game mode. Story mode, that's what story mode is, so you're going to get killed there whether you want to or not. But we leave the possibility to go through the game the first time, if you know where to go and what to do. Then, as in any other RPG, you can just go through it the first time, and surprise Melenis very much. About the generally negative reviews, you know, we don't burn out because of negative reviews. We burn out more because of the lack of positive reviews. Because a lot of people think it's very unimportant. You know, like, what am I there? Well, alright that they're great, so what? Quote dot. Actually it's not what, it's very important. Your feedback is the only thing, probably, for today, before the release, the only motivator for us to do something further, to do better, to finalize in general. Because when you read nice feedback, you realize that you did it, that you succeeded. It's an indicator that we're going the right way. So all we want from the players is for them to leave us positive feedback so that we realize what direction we're going in. And then you should work on yourselves. If for you it's really criticism, you are knocked out from under your feet and you can't do anything. You just need to understand the reasons for this criticism. Reason, not reason. It's probably more with psychologists. They will tell you. But we can only pass on our experience and our attitude to positive and negative feedback.
I guess I would like to add, as a community manager, that yes, of course, when you see negative comments, negative feedback, it is important to pull yourself together and not let this feedback pass through you and through your heart, but only let good things pass through your heart. We have to work with negativity and we should always be grateful to our players, because it's great to write a good comment, and even when a bad comment was written, the person spent their time, spent their energy to form and deliver an opinion.
Just write your opinion, it's important to us.
Yes, write your opinion, but the negativity and criticism just needs to be dealt with. Now there will be a question about the game itself. Will there be more locations? Will there be different endings for different characters? And also a very interesting question. Will any of Bjorn's classes appear that will start out in werewolf form?
Well, we definitely won't add new classes, because adding a new class means adding a new classes to the other characters. Otherwise there will be dissonance. Why Percival has 3 classes, Bjorn has 5, and Venades has 4 again. So we'll have to keep adding them all. But this situation that people have long wanted to start fights in the form of a werewolf, so that they don't have to waste time on transforming, accumulating these notches and stuff like that. It's been around for a long time. We've heard it and we solved it in a different way. I won't spoiler in which event, but in one of the events there's a special item for Bjorn that allows him to do it. And if you haven't dug it up yet or can't find it, welcome to our Discord server. Ask us and we'll give you a small hint under the spoiler.
Regarding new maps and biomes, this will no longer be in the main game. Meaning you are now seeing everything and all the locations that are in the game. In the DLC, which will be released later, I hope the same year, but here as we have time, we'll see by workload and the success of the game itself. By the way, everyone who buys the game before release will get the DLC as a gift. Now, the DLC will be quite voluminous. In terms of the number of runs, quests, and continued story development, There's probably more there than in the main game even. The entire previous game is in there, plus a bunch of different things are thrown in there as well. It's going to have new places to go to. So, definitely, I hope we will surprise you with new formats, new bosses, new locations. Well, and most importantly, it's the story continuation of the game. That will definitely be there. That is, if in the main game we tell about 3 heroes, about their destinies, then in the DLC we will reveal the fate of the main one who resurrects everyone. Yes, I won't spoil it.
That's a good question. Also a very interesting one. What is the hardest part of the developer's job?
In my opinion, the hardest part of a developer's job and also the strongest part is, paradoxically, the team. That is when you make something, a feature, you should always keep in mind that your work affects the work of other people as well. That is adding literally one branch to the event means the work of writers, the work of artists. It may be, if there are some new super tricky things. It is also the work of programmers. It is also the work of translators. It is the work of sound designers, and it is just one small branch. In what to talk about if it's some larger event, like the same full-blown event, either the connections between them, or from new units. I mean, how to keep it all in your head, how to keep track of the progress, because you can create some task for translation, rendering something, and then it just gets lost in a bunch of other tasks.
Yes, here you also need to understand that any idea of a game designer, which seems simple, and the most important thing is to stop yourself and not to do them, such things, when you are like, here is some bullshit for 5 minutes, so what's the big deal? Now we will have a card flying out of the demon's mouth when he shouts some battle screech. The programmer will look at this and say that it will take him 3 days to turn this model into a map source. Now we need to set the location of this model, write it down, or they come up with some new mechanics or change an existing mechanic and think, oh, the description needs to be corrected here. Big studios, which have all the localizers inside the studio, quickly changed everything and changed the card description in all the languages, but for us, of course, it becomes a pain, because in order to fix the description of one map you have to find all the translators who can change this phrase, rephrase it to make it more understandable, and it takes a long time. And that includes when we say something like, oh, let's do, for example, a very interesting final fight with Milenis. This is the final game, which we're working on very closely now. No spoilers, I'll just say that in it we decided to add something, and it breaks the whole story, although the idea is very cool. And the scriptwriters went to think how to explain why Venadis can do such things at all, and that's why we, for example, gave up some things there, because the thing is cool, and the gameplay would be great, but it's a storyline that needs to be rewritten halfway through the game, and we're not ready for such things now, because we still want to see the release, how many things can be reworked. And coming back to the question, it's both a blessing and a curse. So it's both a blessing when you work with talented people, and you do very cool things. Very cool ideas come, and when you can rely on the team that you came up with an idea, brought it to the team and the team was able to do it and maybe even bring a lot of things that you didn't even think of, to develop. And if your team can make a globe out of, I don't know, balls and it will spin and work and something will happen, even though you asked for just a ball, and they were able to develop it, that's very cool. But on the other hand, you also get the fable, swan, crayfish and pike, because sometimes there are arguments, and this one wants to do it this way, the other one wants to do it differently, fights, arguments. That's also a certain problem, and especially when you try to balance it so as not to offend anyone, because when the team is small, even I think any team, the main and most difficult thing is to get used to each other, to understand that this is a purely working process, so that people do not quarrel, do not fall into negativity towards each other. It is very bad for the team. That's why it's the most difficult thing in the work, to understand the criticism within the team, to understand the tasks, and how to fulfill them. But otherwise, if you do what you love, I think nothing is difficult for you. Only interesting things can arise for you. Here the task has arrived. It is very interesting. Some may say it is difficult, but that is what makes it interesting. You have to remember that when you have infinite resources, you can do any complex task simply by spending a lot of time and, accordingly, money and so on. And the difficulty is to make this task as cool and high quality, but without doing it in long, expensive ways. That is, finding easy solutions to complex issues. Everything is ingenious and simple, and this is the most important, the most difficult thing, to find simple solutions to complex problems. This is how I see it, if we talk about work processes, if we talk about something complex.
I would like to add that one of the most difficult parts of a developer's job is the release. And we received a lot of questions about it, and we keep receiving them. When is the release anyway? When can we expect the game to be released?
Well, generally speaking, when I say release is when the game is ready. And actually that's probably the biggest problem, because when you make something, you want to make it better, even better all the time, as long as there are such opportunities. So probably the release date is ready when it's ready. That's probably the right thing to do. But I think, even I'm rather stating that we've scheduled the release for the end of August 2024. We believe that the game will be ready. So we can officially say that around August 25 to 28 will be the release of the game. Hopefully now we have answered that question and there will be other questions now, not on the release date.
There definitely should be fanfare somewhere. We're very happy, because finally this major secret is out. Also, by the way, we can also add one more time about the fact that after we release the game in August, the DLC, Millennium Nightmares, will be out, as Andrew already said, either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year. But we will definitely tell you about that too as the progress will be and as we work on the project. Next question is, will the price go up any more? And why has the price gone up so much in 4 years? Should we expect more price increase?
The price will not go up anymore, and I generally think that if you have a broken and raw product, you should either invite volunteers to test if you want free tests, or make a demo where people can try the game. Because you want to take the full price tag, then give a finished product. I mean, I've personally stopped going into early access games that are straight up blatantly raw. That is, a person released the project, said, here you go, and also for the full price tag. I think that if you already invite people to such an unfinished game, but you want them to help you, you should at least lower the price. It's such a format of thanking a game that would cost a lot. A player can now buy cheap for helping the game figure out what direction to take it in. But in general, make demos and give them away for free. In our case, we just didn't have the money to make the game further in its entirety, so we basically put a price on it, but the price was extremely low. And then when we already realized the size of the game, that we had already made 3 characters, only then did we make the price tag just a mid-market price tag, which we think is decent for our game, because we've done a lot more on it than we planned, even at the old price tag. So like I said, there's going to be a split between DLC and the main game. But if you buy the game now, no problem, you'll get the DLC as a full game. There are no more price increases planned for the game itself.
You currently have 3 characters. Are there any plans for more characters or even a villain?
There will be no new classes for sure. I'll keep silent about villains.
Will there be porting to other platforms?
Yes.
And that's enough.
Yes, the game plays very well on tablets. I had a little laptop, an old Nexus on Windows, and I would run the game on it, and I was very comfortable testing just lying on the couch. And it was very cool to play, it was very comfortable, cool, and so definitely at least on a tablet, at most on phones. But once we get to the point where we learn how to tether a gamepad and make a card-based roguelike game comfortable on a gamepad, Then I think later on PlayStation and Xbox. Steam Deck is already available, just without a joystick for now. Well, and Switch, I think that's in the plans for all of us.
Next question. Is there life after release? Are there plans to expand the game's universe into other genres? And will there be more DLC besides Melenis's Nightmares?
We have plans, they also depend purely on the success of the game itself. We have plans for a sequel. There are a lot of secrets in Knock on the Coffin Lid that we will reveal in the course of gameplay, and we will already put a point in Melenis's Nightmares, but again I don't want to spoiler.
Well, our questions have come to an end for today. I have a big request. A very big request. First of all, write down the comments about whether or not you liked our video in the new format. And also be sure to hit up our social media. The links will all be in the description. Leave your comments, ask your questions. We're always happy to chat with you. We are open to communication and love to answer your questions.
We have selected the most important questions for this issue. In our opinion, there were still a lot of small questions, just more about production, about workflow, about anything in particular, specifically about some bosses in the game, about events and so on. We'll leave that for the next diary. Thank you for following us. If we see feedback that you are interested in this format and we should continue it, we will definitely release the next answers to the questions, more about the game itself. Maybe we will tell you about some things we did, about the events, how they were created. We have a few events based on real life. We have a lot of Easter eggs, which you can also find in the game. By the way, did you find them all or did you not? You can write down in the comments and we'll tell you if you find all of them or not. Probably the most surprising one is Shrek's toilet on the map. Okay, spoilered, again. Thank you for following us. We look forward to your comments. We bid you farewell until the next diaries. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye everyone.